Welcome to another show, Don't Get This Twisted. I am Rob, along with my co-host as always, Tina. Tina, how you doing?
I'm hanging in there, Rob.
Yes, that you are. There's a
barely.
Yeah, no shit, right? Aren't we all? You know, I threw a idea for a show toward you today, and we're gonna have to work on it. But I think it's gonna be called "From Chaos to Calm: How to Manage Life," and I think we're gonna have to come up with some things like that. But it's life is chaos, and since we're all, man, I living paycheck to paycheck, living as financially strapped as we can. I had someone a long time ago talk to me about alternative living. So like living in a van or living in like a tiny, not an RV, but
tiny house, like a converted garage.
A converted garage, but like a trailer, like one of like those little Silver Streams, like living in something like that. Or you could hook up to water, living in a garage that's like a converted garage, and living in an ADU, which is really cool. And since you said it, I don't know what
I was wrong.
Oh, were you? What is it? What does it stand for?
ADU
accessory.
Stands for accessory dwelling unit.
Okay. That makes sense because it's kind of an accessory to your home, because usually they're on a piece of land, right? Yeah. My old boss, she built 2 on her property. One for her mother, so she could she's getting older and she wanted her to stay there. And then one right next to her that is for the children, if they want to come and stay and hang out and they just want to stay for a night. It's like so 2 little 1 bedrooms. Those are really bitching though. Those are homes.
Yeah, full kitchen, full bathroom.
Yes, like they're really cool. Like I walked her place when I went over to visit one time, and I was like, I could live here. Matter of fact, I would live there. It was so bitching because the way that it was set up was like one long room that was like your living room and a wall and our living room and a wall that was backed up the bedroom. And the kitchen was it was one big open floor plan. Then you went down the hallway towards the bedroom. Bedroom was on the left side, bathroom was on the right, and your stackable laundry was right there. Super bitchin'. It was probably, at best, probably 600 square feet. But It felt roomy because there was no wall between the kitchen and the living area. So it just seemed very large.
Yeah.
And the bedroom was probably, I'm guessing 11 by 11. So it was small. Like you couldn't put a king in there. You'd probably, if you wanted a queen, you'd have to stuff it in there. I think she had 2 fulls in each one.
I think my room here is a 10 by 10 and I have a queen size bed in here and it's tiny.
Yeah. I have a queen in mine, but I have a big ass room.
You have a bigger room for sure.
Yeah, you've seen my bedroom coming over here to record the show, but it's big. But I think my living area isn't. I mean, it's a pretty big apartment. It's like 990 square feet. It's pretty big. But the way that the rooms are set up actually work. Even my son's room is it's pretty long. It's pretty big, considering. But nice. I think going forward though, and mostly like being a little bit older, I don't know if I could live in a van. I think a van is a tad much for me.
Yeah, it's a little too much.
It's a little too small.
Those tiny houses too are really tiny.
They are, but those are kind of cool too. Only because, like, look, mostly if you are bound and determined to just be you and you want to escape, having a small home, I could live in a 650 square foot home.
Live permanently?
Yeah.
I don't think
if I was by myself, sure. But I'd have to have a little land. It could be me and my dog, and I would have no problem at all. Just come in, do your stuff. and have a decent sized piece of property to walk around on and hang out on? Sure. Because to me, it's literally, it's just, it's a place to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe, I say that now because I'm not retired. Maybe if I was retired, I'd want a little bit bigger place because I'm going to be around the house more often. But like right now, but it would, it's definitely a different kind of life though. I can see why people like it because you're kind of living mostly a van, and I couldn't do it, but I can understand it. You're really just kind of always driving around doing stuff.
It's
You
true.
know what I mean? And most of those people have like jobs, and then they get a gym membership for the lowest they can get, right? Like $15 a month. And that's where they go in the morning, work out, shower for the work day, get dressed, and then go to work. It's definitely you have to be a different kind of person. You know what I mean? Like you have to have that nomad kind of gypsy way of looking at things. To me, it would be difficult. You'd have to have a bigger van. Like I couldn't imagine sleeping in something small. Like I just couldn't. I hadn't slept in a king size bed in quite a long time. And I stayed over a friend's house and we shared a king size bed. And it was interesting that you feel like you're not next to someone.
Yeah.
It's very, considering I have a queen. I have a queen and I sleep alone every night. And I still feel like I have a lot of room because you do. But you get in a king size bed, and she was tiny. She's a tiny little girl. So like, I felt like I had like so much real estate. It was funny. And she sleeps on the edge no matter what. That's just how she sleeps.
That's how I do it too.
So she was like this little, and I had all this room, and I remember like laying in bed, she was sleeping, and I remember like rolling and looking around like, holy crap, I have all this room. It felt like I was in my own bed. So I hadn't slept in a full or twin in quite a long time. And I had stayed at a friend's house who had a full. You start feeling like, oh, wow, I don't have a lot of room.
No, you definitely don't on a full.
Yeah. And I haven't slept in a twin bed in forever, but I'm sure you have to sleep in a fetal position to do to do that, because just to fit right, you know what I mean? So a van, I couldn't imagine it, but I'm sure that there's no rent, right? So if you are working like a lot of those people are, because it's like this nomad thing where you enjoy doing that. I mean, you're literally on the low end, probably saving. Let's say you wanted to get a room. The cheapest rooms where I live are about $1,000, maybe a little less, maybe $800, the best. So you're saving at least $800. And let's say you wanted a 1-bedroom apartment, you're saving $1,700 every single month. So if you did that for a year, I mean, you're talking about taking home, $12,000. I can see where people could get ahead. Now, it might be difficult if you're younger and dating and you're like, so let's go back to your house. It's right there, parked in the parking lot. That would be like, yeah.
I think that would be my first and last time seeing that person.
Yeah. You'd almost have to explain it if you went on like a coffee date first to get it out of the way and say, okay, look, if you want to hang out, cool. If the gal was kind of cool, you might be able to work around it, but you better be able to say like, I'm working towards something. Like, I don't want to be a nomad forever.
Right.
You're not living on the street. And it's like, if you smell good and your hair's good and your clothes are, you look like you're trying to do something, I could understand.
I don't know. I don't think no.
Right. It would be difficult.
No.
It would be hard to do. you'd almost have to go out on a bunch of dates and then, not go to each other's houses for a little while just to see if you're connecting and then drop it on somebody. But even that might be really bad.
Yeah, I think that would be a pass.
You're like, just so you know, I don't have a house. I live in my car.
Yeah. Just so you know, I'm not a small person. I'm not living in a van with you, nor am I going to be able to live in a tiny house because you won't be able to get past me in it. And I don't want to. I don't know. I don't think I would want to do that.
I think I could do. I could do like a Silver Stream, like one of those, towable. I don't even what do they call those? It's not an RV.
Campers.
Camper, yeah, like a camper. I could probably do a camper without it being horribly bad. Just because, and again, alone. Like those also aren't for living in as a couple, I don't think.
I don't think they're meant to be lived in at all.
Some are, because no, you're right. Probably not lived in. They're meant to be at a camping ground for a couple of days because they, a lot of those have like water hookups where, it's meant to be lived out of for several days. My dad has an RV, like a real RV, like the ones that, the ones that cost as much, as a small home. Yeah. I remember when he told me how much he paid, my jaw almost hit the ground. I was like, you paid how much for this?
Wait, what?
Oh, yeah. I was like, what? But now here's the flip side. He's retired. My stepmom's retired. They have used the shit out of it. They've been to every lower 50.
Well, then it makes sense that they had it.
Yes. And I think they just got rid of it. They just sold it. Because they've been gone a long time. They got it when they lived in California. That had to be, I've been here 5. That had to be like 10 years ago. So 10 years, and it got road work, and they just started having problems with the extendables on the side. That was it. And the last I heard, they were trying to sell it. I don't know if they did or not. But they got work out of it. And so they drove that shit all over. And you don't even have to put the sides out if you don't want to.
Right.
Because they had a queen size bed in the back. So their bedroom was always there, and they could eat, at the small table without extending it out and making it all big. So they didn't have to do that. That I can understand living, but that is, once you decide to do that, you are retired, and your whole life is like, you want to just drive and go on the road and see the world. That would be kind of cool. And you don't want to keep all the stuff that everybody keeps that ends up in a bin at the end of your life. Yeah. Yeah. And you just want to, mostly if you're like, let's say like my dad, they live in South Dakota where the winters are friggin' cold, so when you leave in September and you go to Florida and Texas and Tennessee and New Mexico and Nevada, it's warm. Okay. Yeah. And you don't mind going to Nevada when it's 90 because at home it's minus degrees. So I can see where a lot of those people, what do they call the snowbirds, right? They fly for the winter. For sure. Which, like Palm Springs out in California, a lot of the people who own homes in Palm Springs and Palm Desert, they don't live there. That's only their winter home. Yep. They come out here because it's, the desert, it's only 50 instead of minus 10. Yeah. And it's definitely true of back east too, the northern states like Rhode Island and Connecticut and Massachusetts and up there, they go to Florida for the summer. Fly south for the winter. For the winter, I should say, not the summer. Because Florida's horrible in the summer. Right. Even up north where they're at is not the greatest. It's just not as hot, but it's humid as all hell. Yeah, it is. That was not my favorite, to be honest with you. Yeah. When I went back to New York in 88, I remember being on Long Island and just like walk outside and the sweat would roll down you. And I was like, holy crap. And although it was a hot summer that year, we were getting like 85 degrees and like almost 90% humidity.
That's horrible.
So it was like, yeah, it was.
You don't dry off. Yeah.
It was pretty brutal. But I get it. I mean, I can see the lifestyle. I can see people who want to do this alternative living because renting, you're not getting anything, right? Any kind of break. And I even hear owning a home now isn't the greatest anymore. It used to be a amazing tax write-off, like
Not
really
so
nice
much.
one. Not so much anymore.
Mm-mm.
It's like all the people, close friends that I've talked to, even they were like, yeah, it's nice, but it's not what it used to be. Even getting married now isn't what it used to be. It's almost a deterrent. You get married and you get hammered on taxes instead of the old days when they were like, getting married was great. The first year I got married.
That's getting worse, actually.
I just heard it's getting a little worse. It's still a perk, but it's not like when I got married in, what was that, 2000, we owned a home and got married and we got like a huge return, like a really nice return. But we both claimed zero. Like we did everything you were supposed to do, taxes wise, but we ended up getting a bunch. And then we had a kid. So we got another 1,000 and the girls were both under 18. So we got 1,000 for each of them.
Nice.
So that, like the first 3 years were bitching because the boy got us 1,000 and my oldest, didn't turn 18 until then. So yeah, it was like, we got 3,000 every year for that. And then tons of tax write-offs. So it's definitely an interesting thing. I can see why people like to do it. The ADU is bitching. I think if I could go to somebody who maybe had ADUs on their property and rent those, not renting a room in the house, but actually renting one of those, I think it's definitely something that I could do because you feel like you're in your own home. You know what I mean? Like you can still play the music loud because the people who own it you're not going to hear anything. It's more of a home without being intrusive, like with a joining wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, I don't know what it's like to live in places like that because when I was a baby, my parents lived in an apartment, but I think I was 2 or 3 when we moved into our first house, and that one had a guest house on the back, so it was a huge situation in Sherwood Forest in Northridge.
And you guys also had the house in the back?
Yeah, we did. My uncle and my dad used their GI Bills to get that first house after they got out of Vietnam. So they put them together. They were able to get this huge house with a huge lot. And my uncle lived in the back house in the guest house and we lived in the front. And
that's
it was
so cool. That is
bitchin'. And then they raised the property taxes like astronomically. It was like 50% or 100%. It was something major. They just double taxes is what they did. And my dad and my uncle were scraping by to make payments already, so they couldn't afford it and had to sell it. And then one of my mom's friends' mothers bought the house in the 80s and it was over $1 million. So it was my dad was kind of pissed. He's like, shit, too bad we couldn't have held on. We would have made a killing. But
yeah, we
moved in here and into the house that I'm at now. And my dad's lived there ever since. So that's been 49 years.
And you've never left. That in itself is big. I mean, you never left because you moved in there.
Well, no, I was gone for 22 years. I lived
No. But what I mean by, yes, but by proxy, by family.
Yeah, by family, we're still here.
Yes.
I don't believe there's a lot of original owners, or actually there's no original owners. I think we were the younger ones for the next phase. I don't think there's very many of us left.
Mm-hmm. I agree. A lot of people, well, here's the bigger problem mostly in California is properties become, if you buy them cheap, when you decide to move, you make a killing. My dad bought a house in Santa Clarita, in a good part of Santa Clarita, like way up in the hills. I forgot what year it was. Let's see. It had to be, it was in the 90s, maybe mid 90s, let's say. I want to say he bought it for like $260,000,
which was nothing.
Which was decent then, in the mid 90s. It was like, it was a good house, and it was in a decent area, and it was a good price. When they left, they sold it for almost $900,000. And
wow.
And
how long were they in it? Like 10 years, you said?
No, they were in it 20 something years. They paid it off.
Wow.
So when they left, it was paid off on top of it. So like they made a killing, and then they moved to South Dakota and bought their house outright, and still had money to put in the bank, because a house in South Dakota was like $250,000, and it was exactly what they wanted. And it was brand new. They bought a brand new house as well. So when they moved in, it was everything that they wanted, they picked out.
Nice.
So pretty cool. So I understand why there's not a lot of owners here anymore, because it's too easy to make a killing if you've bought something that's old.
That's true.
Like that house where you're at. That house in the San Fernando Valley, I bet you it would be close to $900,000. And I'm sure he doesn't owe $900,000 on
it. No.
So look at it that way.
Yeah, but he paid it off and then got another.
Yeah, and got another. Yeah, exactly. Got another loan.
Yeah,
against it. But I mean, even so. As we move forward, I think you're going to see a lot of people building ADUs on property.
For sure, that's happening here like crazy.
Yeah,
there's a house that's right across the street from the high school that we used to go to. It was one house
on the other side of
on Woodley, where the football field is.
Yeah.
And they built on where one house stood. There are now 5 units.
Wow. So someone owns that property and is renting those out, I'm sure.
5 different ways, yeah.
Man, they're making a killing.
And across the street, it was a single unit dwelling. I grew up in that house with the kids that grew up in that house. And they put 3 units on one. Man. And I think 2 are in the same house.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy moly. Yeah, I mean, they're nice. I'm telling you, the ones that my old boss built, they're beautiful. I mean, they're brand new. But I mean, it had everything that you would think. I don't think she put granite tops in it, but a nice kitchen top. You know what I mean? It wasn't like apartment quality, but it wasn't granite. It was that nice in between. And she put a full-size refrigerator, full-size stove. Like, it wasn't like you were living in a box. It had all the amenities that you needed. And she did something that was really cool that I liked. She put a back door. So you could walk out the back door to like a small piece of concrete, like a walkway. And then there was bushes there. So let's say you had an animal. You could go out your back door, walk your animal, and then walk right back in. It was I loved the setup. So it wasn't, if you didn't have to walk out the front door to get air. You could walk out your back door and not bother anybody, not be seen.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Like you probably could have put a nice little small table with some chairs right outside the back door. There was that much concrete. Yeah. Like a small, I'm talking like maybe like a drink table, maybe like, 24 by 24 table with 2 chairs easily. There's enough concrete, and it was behind both ADUs. So it was one stretch of concrete.
Wow.
It was really nice.
Cool.
They did a great job. So I think you're going to see a lot of people trying to build that. I have another friend who has a pool that costs, and they love their pool. But she even said that she told her mom we should just bury the pool and build an ADU.
Yes, that was what we talked about. But I like the pool.
Yeah, I mean, so does she. But I mean, at the end of the day, what's going to be, at some point, what's going to be more useful?
The pool. No.
I mean, I guess if the person who lives in the ADU is paying rent and paying in, you're saving, $1,500 a month or $1,000 a month, even if it's family and you give it to them for $1,000 a month. I mean, profiting $12,000 a year on top of what you're making is going to change everything in your life.
A little bit.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of cool. I understand why people want to do it. I think it's difficult.
I think because of the economy and everything, that's where we're headed, because people can't live alone in a house by themselves on one income.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's
the majority can't.
It's hard for me. I do all right. My rent just went up again. It's $2,300 a month.
That's
now
crazy.
I have my son that lives here who's now older and he's helping, but I'm also trying not to rape him either. Like, he needs to help me, but I don't want to undercut him so he makes no money at work. Like, that's not fair, I don't think.
Yeah, you want him to want to work.
Yeah, I want him to do both. Like, make some money and have some, and put it away. But you do have to help. I mean, nothing's free.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right, though. I think the future is a lot of older people like us are going to be living in smaller dwellings if you don't have a home. Or
living with multiple people in it. I was talking the other day. I said, Tim, what are we going to do when we get older? And one of my friends said, we're going to do a revamp on the Golden Girls because we'll have to live together. And I thought about that. I'm like, she's not lying. It could be that way.
Yeah, it could, for sure. I mean, I like the idea of communal living. Like a big piece of land with a bunch of ADUs that it's just communal. Like, it's a community. Everyone lives on the same piece of land and, not right on top of each other, but enough that you can kind of have your own little backyard. And I could totally do that. I think a lot of people are like, oh, but what if you don't like somebody? There's people I don't like where I live now. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to change. You're always going to be around somebody you might not like.
Very true.
It's just going to happen. Even in your family. Shit, there's people that in your family you don't want to see.
I'm telling you, I have those days.
Yeah. I mean, it's common, or people who don't get along and don't talk anymore, and then through other things happen. So I don't want to live out of my car. I don't want to live out of a van. And I wouldn't do it, but I think a smaller dwelling for me later on in life, I could totally understand. And I could totally be down with it. I could probably live out of, if you downsize everything, because like, let's say my son moves and leaves on. I could live in a 1-bedroom apartment because I don't need a lot. Like my bedroom now is a bed, 2 little side tables, and my insanely huge computer rig podcasting station. It's
pretty large.
It's huge. It's massive. But I could put that in the living room and be okay with it. Like, it doesn't need to be in any certain place. It's just in the bedroom here. So that I could totally do. And if my rent didn't really go up a lot, let's say my son left, I would put this huge, massive rig in that other room and just use it as a secondary thing. That would be the only, that would be the only hard part, is like the luxuries that we're used to. I couldn't imagine being on the road and not having, like, I couldn't imagine not having internet or, a laptop or a computer station that I wanted to just log on and do my shit. I couldn't imagine having to like find a Starbucks or find some kind of Wi-Fi. That has to be a very difficult part of that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You're spending a lot of time in places that have free Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm.
Having to buy a coffee because they know they won't let you hang out there.
I don't even drink coffee. That wouldn't work for me.
Yeah. And no, but you could probably go get like they have.
I don't know. It'd probably be easier to just make a hotspot on your phone. Use it that way.
You would probably have to. Yes. Mm-hmm. You'd have to pay whatever the extra is to make a hotspot on your phone.
Yes.
And I'm sure that that's how they all live. Right. But but at some point you have to power your laptop. Battery doesn't last forever. You got to charge your telephone. The necessities that we live with that we totally take for granted is kind of funny because we do. Like when my phone gets down low, I say, if I could plug it in and go to work. Like I'm not worried about my phone not being charged at the end of the day.
Right. So you plug it in pretty much anywhere.
Yeah. Well, and that's what people do. So what I've been to not fast food joints. And it's generally younger people, but it's wild to see somebody in a McDonald's. They're nursing a Coke because they had to buy something, and the plug is like way up on the wall, and they have a phone plugged into that, trying to get their stuff charged. And they're not even homeless. That's just somebody who wants their phone charged. Right. Somebody who lives out of a car. I guess there's ways of getting around it, obviously.
Those little battery packs that you just stick right on the back of your phone really do work too. And then when you're at the gym or wherever you're at, just plug it in right here at work.
Yeah. That's what I think. That's how most of the people probably live.
I'm sure.
They go to work and everything that they need to charge, they go, there's like 8 things plugged in at work. And they're like, got to do that while I'm here because I need power.
Right.
I think it's an interesting thing going forward. I think you're going to see more people well after we're gone, definitely living alternate lifestyles. So younger people don't even want to buy homes because they feel trapped. Mm-hmm. I want to say it was an article or I heard it on another podcast, but that's like the biggest thing. And the reason is, what if I want to leave? What if I want to get a new job? What if I just want to pack up and go? And it's like, we were never raised like that.
No,
we were raised to
get your graduate from high school, get your diploma, get to work, to get a job, to get married, to have kids,
and to buy a home.
Yeah.
Everything was about planting seeds, not
survival.
And that not worrying about picking up your life and leaving. Picking up your life and leaving was like life altering. Mm-hmm. I was offered a job across the country. Do I want to take it?
Yeah.
Now people are like, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm just going to pack up all my shit and live out of my car in another state until I can find a job and then get a new apartment or rent a room somewhere. Like, and look, I've done it. I've rented rooms. Thankfully, I rented rooms from people I knew.
Yeah.
There was a person down the street from me that needed a roommate at one point, and I told her, I could totally move in with her. It would be easy. We got along. We had a good relationship with each other. I could do it. I also lived with somebody for 8 years, but I knew her well. Mm-hmm. And even knowing her well, there was rough days, right? Mm-hmm. I think if I was ever going to live with somebody again, I'd go with the format I've always done. I've always lived with girls.
Yeah.
And I for some reason it works for me.
I don't know if I'd want to live with a bunch of girls. I think I could do better with guys.
Yeah. I've only lived with one at a time.
Yeah.
I lived with my friend who lives in North Carolina. I lived with her in my early 20s. Probably my best roommate ever. We had such a great time. There was nothing romantic, which made it very easy. At least for me. She always had a crush on me, and years later told me even when we lived together, it was very hard for her.
Oh,
yeah. So which is, look, I mean, I wouldn't say that I didn't, I didn't, I just knew not to push the button because I didn't want to ruin a great living arrangement.
I get that.
I'm sure I could have walked in at any time and said, "Hey, you want to have sex?" And there would have been no blinking. It would have just been on. But on the flip side of that, we had a great friendship that was just so easy to live with. So I do kind of believe it's either we're going to live alternative styles, like we're talking about these small, tiny things, or you are right. We're all going to live with friends that we know, even in the worst times, even when we're having a shitty day, you can survive with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I have a very small group of people I could do that with. I couldn't even do it with my best friend. I lived with him for a little while and I almost killed him. We were very young. We were 20, 21. And we were sitting at a kitchen table. And at the time, he had some friends over and they were all drinking. And he drank a lot that day. And he started saying things out loud that only me and him knew about. And I literally had to lean over the table and tell him, like, you need to shut up now or I'm going to throw you down the staircase. Because we lived on the second floor. Yeah, we lived on the second floor. And his friend that was there visiting was very big, like much bigger than me. And I had to look at him and go, don't stand up. He's got a big mouth. I'm going to shut it. And I said, well, what's it going to be? And he didn't say anything. And I went to bed. And we were fine the next day. But it's living with dudes is difficult. Because there is alpha mentality and I think that's what you're talking about, like living with a girl. It'd be difficult because you're very much the same when it comes to hierarchies and that kind of thing. So where with a woman, every time I've lived with a woman, it was great because I still got leaned on like I was the protector provider. Right. Yeah. I fixed everything in the house. I made sure that everything was good at night. I made sure everything was locked up. The whole thing of the man part, just without the relationship. So it was always like really good. And like I said, I've done it twice for long periods of time. Like the one with my friend in North Carolina, I think I lived with her 3 years. And then my friend in Cam, almost 9.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, I went from my family house, which always had people staying with me. And it's funny because people go, how do you put up with that? I'm like, it's been my whole life. Our house was the house everybody came to if they didn't have a place to live, or if they needed a parent, or if they needed protection, or if they needed a roof over their head. So my ex and I, at one point, we had counted that there was at least 30 people in my lifetime that lived in our house with us. So we had to learn to share. And I think the number is higher than 30. That's a conservative number, to be honest with you. Because at 30, I said, I don't want to think about this anymore. So it took us a couple days to get that list together. And then have it verified with my dad. Because he's like, yeah, they were there too. Yep. Oh, shit. Remember when they lived here? It was one of those things. So I always had to share. Everybody thinks that we had this perfect life where my brother had his own things and I had my own things and mom and dad were cool and everything was fine. But we always had people we had to share with.
Right.
Or I slept on the couches many a times because somebody had to live here and needed a bedroom and, just some bullshit. So, and then when I lived with my ex, then it was, I had to share with him and learn how to make that work. And that was not easy. I remember having some really big fuck you matches together. Yeah. And then my daughter came and, I didn't give birth to her. She was adopted. So she came with all of her own issues and all of her family and all of the drama that, came with being a foster parent and then being adopted and all the social workers and the therapies and, so it was really hard to live with the two of them. Not that I didn't love it, I did, but it was a lot. It was a lot to take all that on, and not even I didn't even know what I was doing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I get it. When when I got with my ex-wife, she moved in with me 4 months later with 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then not too long after that, my mother-in-law moved in.
Oh.
Actually, she was great. I would love to bitch about that, but I can't.
But you can't?
I can't. No.
That's
She
funny.
cooked. She was always doing something. She watched the girls when we wanted to do something. I can't even complain about my ex-mother-in-law. Not even yeah, I'm lucky when it comes to that. But I get it. That's why like getting into a relationship with people is difficult, because once you decide to meld that together, you're taking what you take for granted at home and now have to put it in someone else's lifestyle.
Yep.
And heaven forbid you're moving into their home, not getting a home together, not getting an apartment together. So you move into their home, and then it's like, okay, I'm more of I mold really easy. So like for me, the first thing I would do is look around and see what they do and just change.
Yeah.
I just find it easier on myself. There's less headache and less fighting. Now, I think you still have to stand up for things that you believe in.
For sure.
But you do have to understand that it's still someone else's home, even though you're trying to make it a relationship home.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the bigger thing is don't throw it in people's faces. You can't go, this is my house, like, okay. Because you hear that enough and you make it their house forever and you leave.
Yeah.
So, and then you end up living in your van because communal, you don't want to do that no more. And your alternative lifestyle living is easier. I'd rather live in my car than get bitched at every day.
Yeah.
So, but I get it. I think all of us, have been in whatever dire straits. When I moved back from Vegas, my son lived with his mom for a month or two. I lived with my best friend for 30 days. Awesome. It was the best 30 days ever. We watched tons of television, had lots of tacos, and drank a lot of booze.
Nice.
It was great. Out of the 30 days, I was probably under the influence, probably 25 of them.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, we drank a lot. And then after that, I lived with my dad for 30 days, which was great. I mended fences. I realized I grew up a lot in life. And then after that, I went to live with my friend in Camarillo. It was awesome. But I understand that, we are going to keep melding and molding as we go.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to live in a car, but I could definitely live a alternate. It doesn't have to be an apartment. I don't think I could rent a bedroom from someone I didn't know.
No, because you need to use a kitchen, and you just need to.
Yeah, and a lot of places that you rent, you do. It's just you end up. If I didn't know somebody, you end up living in your bedroom way too much, and that's also not healthy. Or what you end up doing is never being at home until it's time to sleep.
Yeah, and that's not healthy either. You need a place to decompress.
Right. And I will tell you, like, when I moved in with my friend in Camarillo, I didn't know her well. I knew her, we had spent a bunch of time together. Like, she modeled. So I was always like taking pictures of her and her friends and a bunch of other things. So we had a decent relationship. But even in the beginning, it was rough. Like, it was difficult to understand somebody new and understand how they work. And so in the beginning,
them.
yeah. And I spent a lot of time in my bedroom. Where I think now I wouldn't do that. If I ended up staying with a friend of mine, like let's say we ended up renting a room or whatever, I would do my best to really be in the social part of the house. I would always try to talk to somebody, and then I would hope that those people would go, hey, I'm kind of having a bad day, or, I'm not in the mood. Cool. Then you go to your room. because if, like you said, you have to, being in your room all the time is not healthy.
It's not.
And when I moved here, when me and my son, I hadn't had an apartment by myself in quite a long time. I mean, years and years, like at least 9, because I lived in Vegas, had my own apartment. I remember moving in here, and the first night, I remember sitting on my couch in my underwear. It just underwear and a t-shirt. And I remember like letting out the biggest sigh ever.
Yeah.
And it was just like, like, okay. And not that I was worried, because I had made a good deal on money to come out here, but I was still, I was still worried, but not ultra worried. Like, okay, now it's time to be, I'm spending more money. I have to make sure I do this. I make sure I have to do that. So, going forward, I think I could live with somebody. Definitely. I could live with a romantic person easily, because I think that that's much easier to do. Molding wise. But I think a lot of people of the millennial generation, and probably Gen Z? Is that what my son is? Yeah, Gen Z. They're going to have these alternate living arrangements. I think you're going to see a lot of people living with roommates for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Because like our generation would always move out, have a couple of roommates, and then bail. You know what I mean? I think you're going to see people living together 4 or 5 years to kind of get ahead, to get a stockpile of money so they can go out and venture on their own.
Yeah.
Or they're just going to stay in that kind of communal living, because like they're all gamers and they dig it. And
they don't talk to each other anyway. So
yeah. And the living room is generally empty.
Yeah.
People meet, eat, and then go back to their rooms, and you'll never hear from them ever again.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I just think that things have just changed so quickly with, people doing this kind of lifestyle. I followed this one guy. I want to say he was Irish. This fool lives out in the forest in a van. And he has a YouTube channel, and he talks about like things that you should do, and how he enjoys being free and out in the land. And, he still goes into town, and he's making money off his YouTube. So that's how he survives. But
seriously?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oof, I couldn't do that.
And so it's interesting. Like he'll be bathing in like the river, like in the summertime, just hanging out, him and his friends. They build hammocks on the trees out in the forest. It's really cool. But in my head, I'm like, no. I mean, I love camping. I don't love camping that much.
But doing it forever is not fun.
No. But something that I found very interesting with that kind of lifestyle is that it's very, very zen-y, right? This guy's just like, you don't understand when you're out here by yourself, how all your worries kind of disappear. And I can understand that part. I mean, I couldn't, because we live in cities where there's so much light pollution, you can't even see the stars anymore. And I was watching some program, and it was these guys who lived out in the country, but they had a city, but where they lived, they drove like 25 minutes. There was no lights. And he's sitting there with his phone, and he's looking at the stars. And it was very like, I was like, oh, that must be so nice that like you can have both, because it's very difficult in Southern California to find a place where there's not so much light pollution that you can actually see the stars at night. Every blue moon where I live, if I drive north up towards where the mountain is, there's not a lot of light pollution up there, and you can look a certain direction and see the stars. But it must be nice to live in a place where like every night there's a starry sky. That would be cool. I don't know. I think my future is in the country somewhere, outside of town. There still has to be a town. I still need to be able to like go into Walmart and go in and get, if I want a pizza, I want to be able to drive into town and get a pizza and come back home.
Yeah.
But I think living outside of a town in a country atmosphere is probably my future. Somewhere I can just go and have a couple of dogs and be left alone.
I hear you. I'm not with you, but I hear you.
Yeah. No, I get you. I don't think that's for everybody either. I really don't.
It's not.
That is not for everybody. And I'll tell you, 10 years ago, I would have told you it wasn't for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think visiting North Carolina gave me this jump start of like, okay, maybe I could live somewhere else.
Yeah.
Forever. Mm-hmm. And it might not be North Carolina because I'd never been there in the summertime and I heard it's hot as balls.
Yeah, forget that place.
But I heard all the South is. So.
Right. Well, it is. It's hot here too.
But here's the cool thing about anywhere other than Southern California. As you go east, you really do get 4 seasons. Mm-hmm. You get a spring and you get a fall and you get a winter and you get a summer. And the summer really is only 3 months, and after 3 months, it goes away. Unlike here where it starts in late May and ends in October.
Yeah.
So it's just different. I don't know. I definitely see the world changing for the best. And at least for that kind of style, not for me, at least not right now, but I definitely think that's going to be the future of a lot of human beings.
Yeah, it's going to have to be. We're getting too many people in these areas.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to go but up.
That's what the other thing I think you're going to start seeing is high-rise apartments.
In in the valley where the San Andreas Fault goes right through, that's not a smart idea. But if it happens, it happens. I mean, I won't live there. I would never live there. I'll live in a van before I'd live in a skyrise. Right. Being that we grew up in LA.
I don't think that I've ever seen actually been in. I know there's some down in LA. Like as you drive in, there's like ones that are like 10 stories. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest apartment I've ever seen is 4 stories. I've never been in an apartment bigger than 4, which is about right.
I want to do that.
It's weird. Being on the 4th floor and looking out is weird. Well, most are 2.
Seeing the apartments in Northridge that were stacked 3 high go down to the parking area underneath made me not want to live in places like that.
Yeah. Even in office buildings, I did some alarm work in an office building in Oxnard, and I remember I have a picture on my phone still, and I was on the 14th floor, and I took a picture and I sent it to somebody. I said, "Do you think you'd even feel it if you hit the ground?" And you probably wouldn't. It would be over so quickly. But 14 stories is high, and like in New York, people live on like the 30th floor.
Yeah. Well, they're not right on a fault line either, though.
No, but you're so high up. Like to me, I just don't think I could live that high. It's like your perspective of the world is just so weird. Like you totally wake up in the morning and go to the window and it's like you can see all of the city. Mm-hmm. Where I don't know. But to me, it would just be weird. Obviously, living in Southern California where we don't have big things like that.
Yeah.
I know there's some off the 405 going into LA. There's a couple of big near Sunset. There's some high apartment buildings, but there's not many. There are definitely not a lot here. Very interesting.
Yep.
All right, girl. Any last words of not living in a truck?
No, I don't have anything for you today. It's
been a day.
Fuck.
You just want to fix your house.
It's not easy. And I don't know. I'm just glad to be here. But yeah, I don't have any real opinions on that today. Live where you got to live, I guess.
Yeah. Do what you got to do to make yourself happy. It's already hard enough.
Yeah.
Just is. And it's an opinion show. Don't get it twisted. Keep coming back every Wednesday. You can check us out on every place you can ever find podcasting. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, somewhere else. I don't know. X. And you go there, there'll be a link on how to listen to the show and share it with everybody. It's been really nice lately. And besides that, that's about all. I'm Rob. That's Tina. We'll see you in a week. Bye.
See ya.